I'm just lying in bed at night, awake, and the curtain blows and a breeze, and I feel in the air this raw pain and sadness transmitting from all these corners of the earth. And you might feel that too sometimes. It's like this heaviness in your heart, or even this anger at the headlines over and over again. The child marriage, the acid burning, the honor crimes, the mass rape, the everyday grueling street harassment, the stoning of widows, the whipping of women for wearing pants or showing an ankle, the drowning of babies because they're girls, the burning of schools, the shooting in the head of little girls because they want to go to school. And that doesn't even begin to touch the cries inside of men who can't be their full selves. It's the widest human rights violation in the world today, the oppression of women. 1 billion women and girls are affected by physical violence, but again, that doesn't even touch the spiritual suppression that's happening for those that are in fear of it. This has been my job for over the last 10 years, to deeply listen to these stories. And I'm here to tell you something that I've realized, and that is that you do not have to wring your hands and worry about with this heavy burden of how can we help women and girls around the world. Because the truth is so profoundly liberating. The truth is that those solutions already exist. They exist inside of women and in between women, and they exist inside of men, the feminine part of men. We just have to figure out how to unlock it. And I believe that the fastest way that we're going to do that, and the fastest way that we're going to reach global sustainability and global equality, is by using the rapid and transformative power of communication technology to crowdsource the feminine intelligence of the planet. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my personal journey being a bit obsessed with how do we create this communication architecture to truly bring women a voice and connect women around the world. And I found the design. And in the process, I found my own voice. So I'm going to tell you 3 things. I'm going to talk to you about the 3 unstoppable trends that exist in the world today. And as a result of those, the 3 top things that the world needs to do now to get us the fastest to global sustainability. And then lastly, about how you can play a role in this and change your own life at the same time. This is a photo of where I grew up as a girl in rural Wisconsin. Behind the barn, I used to bring my blanket and my books and surround myself in stories. I was so painfully shy. It was like having my voice stuck in my throat, and I remember what it felt like not to matter. But I found solace in my stories, and I always like to read difficult ones, like the Diary of Anne Frank, and see the truth. And I wanted to see through that truth to get to the other side and envision how to do that. And that's how I ended up going to the Amazon at 19 and working with indigenous women who were struggling because of oil contamination on their traditional lands. And those women's children were dying of skin cancers and stomach cancer. And I asked them, what do you need? And they said, be our messenger. Please take our stories and take the solutions that we know how to heal this land back to your country. So I became an international journalist and traveled around the world, but everywhere I went, every woman that I met said the same thing, please be our messenger. Suddenly, I was like, wait a minute, I don't merely want to be a messenger. I want to create a media source where these women can be their own messengers for the world and speak in their own words. But I was way too shy to do it on my own, and I thought, that's not going to be me to do that, so I held it inside. But I kept seeing the future, and I kept seeing these 3 unstoppable trends. And the first unstoppable trend is that women's leadership is rising across every sector. The problem is, it's not happening fast enough. The New York Times says that it will be 500 years before we achieve full leadership equality. We don't have that kind of time. Entered the communication revolution, the great accelerator. As we know, women from South Africa to Saudi Arabia are using their cell phones and their laptops, and they're accessing healthcare information, they're documenting crimes, they're starting major movements, as we know from the Arab Revolution and from most recently in India. The problem is that women do not have equal access to the internet, and there's a big gender divide. In fact, a recent study showed that on average in the developing world, women have 25 to 40% less access than men do. And the third unstoppable trend is the shift in consciousness. Basically, every single world institution is now saying investing and empowering women and girls is the #1 way that we're going to solve all world problems. We've got the World Bank saying this, but we've got Oprah saying this, we've got Ted Turner, we've got the Dalai Lama saying this, and we even have The Economist saying, forget China, forget India, it's women who are the drivers of the new global economy. So I looked at all these things and I said, I can't hold this vision back anymore, I just have to do it. And at 28, I started founded a global media network called World Pulse, and started to build an interactive website where women could truly connect and have a global voice. And this picture here is actually a day of the life of the Pulse, where you can see the kinds of connections that our network of over 50,000 women from 190 countries are making every day. They're logging on, many of them from internet cafes or using cell phones, and uploading their stories and beginning to collaborate with each other, support each other, whether they are logging on from a coffee shop in Kansas or a center in Afghanistan. They are exchanging resources, supporting each other, and changing each other's lives. But the process of starting this wasn't so easy. And I remember this awakening I had that changed me. It was 2 a.m. in the morning, and I was working late at night on my computer. We had just launched the beta site, and it had been a particularly rough year because we didn't really know if it was going to work. And it was a lot of hard work, and many people told me, Jensine, your vision, it's too big. You should really scale it back. But that night, I couldn't turn away from the computer screen because the election violence was starting in Kenya, and there were hundreds and hundreds of women coming on, many of them with texts saying, please help, is anybody there? Hello, hello. Please tell me that I'm not alone. And they were writing about all the gunfire surrounding their homes and their villages being torched. And suddenly, I heard this beep of the Skype internet chat. It was a woman named Leah, HIV-positive mother of 5 from rural Kenya. And she wrote, "Zoom off to bed, Jensine. You must rest. Don't worry, I'm carrying the flame." And I can't even describe what that felt like. It was this burden lifted off my shoulder, knowing that she was there for me. And while I would sleep on the other side of the world, she would carry that. And her dream was my dream too. she would have my back. And that moment I knew I'm never going to give up. I am never going to stop on behalf of the millions of silenced women and invisible women like her, because I'm not ever going to be alone. This is a photo of meeting Leah for the first time myself and her in Kenya. And we are actually talking to hundreds of women who are now beginning to come onto the internet. And we're telling them about the amazingness of the friendship that we've forged. But there are so many women who have showed me what's possible. This is Nema Namadamu from the Democratic Republic of Congo, one of the most silenced regions of the world due to the lack of communication infrastructure. It's one of the worst regions in the world for women too, known as a capital for rape. Now Nema started to come on, and she began to write about her big vision for this new Congo. And soon enough, she started to ignite this whole movement of women, training hundreds and hundreds of them how to get emails and to log on and share their visions too. And soon enough, she had started a women-only internet cafe, and they were fighting over the computers, and they were talking about, there were like 3 butts per seat, and they were talking about that they wanted solar power, that they wanted women's leadership training, that they wanted telecommunication networks. They created their own development plan. And then they realized they wanted to petition the US government for a presidential envoy for peace. So we showed them how to use change.org, and sure enough, they got over 100,000 signatures within a few weeks from around the world. And then later, just a few weeks ago, we got a call from the White House. The National Security Council wanted to meet with us, and they are now seriously considering a presidential envoy because they've heard directly from these women. From India, she logged on and she began to tell the stories of all the trash pickers and the sex workers in her community. And she started to win all these awards. People were noticing her stories from the UN and the Indian government. And she not only interviewed these women, but she would train them in technology of how to use their cell phones to escape from trafficking and how to write their elected officials. And her vision is to train over 10,000 women in her region. Chi Van Lena from Cameroon, a crusader to end the practice of breast ironing. It's a very little known practice. I didn't even know about it until a few years ago when she started writing about it. Her story got picked up on CNN, and it went to #1 on CNN.com. Because of all the visibility that she got through that, she won an award and launched a major breast ironing campaign to end the practice across the region. And within months, she's reached over 20,000 women and girls who have vowed to end the practice. And it's a practice where they actually, mothers and grandmothers, heat up hot stones and coconut shells, and they pulverize the breast tissue of their daughters in an attempt to protect them from the sexual violence that exists in their communities. But of course, it causes severe trauma, psychological and physical trauma. But she went into the churches, and she went into the hair salons, and even engaged men, superstar musical men, to create viral videos that now are on public around TV. And I think it won't be a few more years before the practice will probably be eradicated from the country. But there are so many things that have come out of networking for the women, going into boats to collect women's stories, speaking at the US State Department, being on CNN, even running for office. So how do we create a strategy out of this? There are 3 things we need to do now. I call it turn on the lights, link the transmitters, and light up the grid. What I mean by this is that we have to reach as many women possible and turn on that precious light of her belief in the power of her own voice. The fastest way we're going to do that is through communication technology. And we have to create these safe online spaces for women who are feeling alone to speak out and to connect and to feel heard. Linking the transmitters. we have to focus on the women leaders who are motivated to reach 100 or 1,000 other women and empower them, like the Stellas, like the Naimas, like the Lenas. This is how we're going to bridge the gender digital divide. This is how we're going to reach off the grid to the women who are illiterate or who do not have access. And we connect them. Something amazing happens. As they are sharing their strategies and their solutions, we're actually tapping into a greater feminine intelligence that does not yet exist on the planet. And that is the secret sauce. Next, light up the grid. Once we've crowdsourced these collective solutions, we must respond with a massive infusion of resources. I'm talking funding, education, skills-based support, and just supporting these women's leadership and their visions. They have those solutions. And how can you be a part of this? Well, listen and connect. If you really want to know what's going on in Syria, do you really want to know how you truly can help bring education to girls in Uganda or Chicago? Well, talk to the women that are there. Connect with them. Turn on her light. Whether it's 1 or 5, turn on her light and ask her what her vision is. And say, I believe in you, and support her. And in that process, you're going to turn on your own light. And trust me, it's going to be so much that you're going to get back, much more than you give, and it will alter your life. And so when we do this, and we begin to make these connections, even person-to-person connections on a massive scale, and we bring the best of the technology sector to support these connections, I'm talking the best, then we are going to ignite this vocal uprising. And women's voices are going to come out of the shadows and drive our own destiny. We're going to go from this radio silence to surround sound. And global decision makers will no longer be able to ignore us. And the collective force of women with allies and with men, we can overturn dictatorships. We will hold corporations accountable. We are going to source so many incredible innovations for society that do not yet exist, and heal the earth. Because when we control our means of communication, we control our destiny. And the result is going to be this volcano of human potential and creativity that is going to shift the world and empower each and every one of us from inside and out.